Hello and welcome to Runkle of the Bailey. My name is Ian Runkle. I'm a Canadian criminal defense and firearms lawyer. The Canadian gun ban has left us with some awkward questions about CZ. Now, if you're a gun person, you probably already know who CZ are. They make some great guns. I have several of them myself. But the question is CZ participating in a critical way in the Canadian gun ban? And does that mean that CZ is anti-gun, or at least willing to help a government disarm the people? Because that's not a great look for CZ. What am I talking about here? Well, the Canadian government has a problem. They've got all of these guns, or at least they're planning to have all of these guns, and then they need a place to dispose of them. The police don't want to do it, and they don't have the equipment to do it. They'd be sitting there manually chop sawing each gun. They don't want to be doing that. The military doesn't want any part of this. They're like, nah, leave us out. Especially because a lot of the people targeted by this ban are Canadian servicemen and women. So this is something they're like, no, leave us out of this, please. So the government needs some sort of company with industrial capacity, but also who already has the necessary licensing to handle prohibited firearms, because these are now radioactive in Canadian law. They can't just hand them, for instance, to some random smelter or some random metal recycler or anything like that. You might be wondering, well, why don't they just part them out or resell them? Canadian policy forbids that. They will not be parting these guns out. They will not be reselling them. If you're an American thinking, oh, there's going to be a bunch of cheap guns on the market, nope. Those are all going to get destroyed. So they need somebody with all of these things already set up. They can't really go to a smelter and give them a business firearms license, because they'd also have to vet all of the employees. And this is a bit of a problem for them. So enter the solution. And it looks like the solution is Colt Canada. Colt Canada is the company that also makes military small arms for the Canadian Armed Forces, so the C7 and so forth. And it's been reported, amongst others, by Tracy Wilson of the CCFR. You can see her here saying, to the best of my knowledge, Colt Canada, when she was asked, where is this disposal happening? Now, I'm not just relying on that for, thinking that this is what's going on. We've also seen some comments in the House of Commons, and we'll just look at this one here. And this one is a bit long, but we're going to look at it because it's important. And so they say, with regard to the government's assault-style firearms compensation program, which is the gun ban, right, is a site related to the program operational on Shoemaker Street in Kitchener, Ontario? We'll talk about that. And if so, on what date did it become operational and what is being done at the site? And they go on to ask, did the government enter into a contract with Colt Canada to receive goods and services regarding the program? And if so, what is the summary of the terms of this contract? And what is the total dollar value of the items surrendered, destroyed at the Shoemaker Street site? Okay, so what am I talking about with the Shoemaker Street site? What is that about? Well, they've already done a little bit of a sort of semi-pilot, and that was with businesses. They seized a bunch of firearms from businesses, but businesses were actually told where to send things. And the address that I heard from businesses was 186 Shoemaker Street in Kitchener, Ontario. So let's have a little look at that. So here is our map, and then we'll just go to Shoemaker Street, 186 Shoemaker Street. All right, here we go. And you can see it's kind of a nice little neighborhood. And you might be wondering, well, what's in this neighborhood? There doesn't appear to be anything. It just looks kind of like a warehouse. Well, we can go into our directions and we can plug in Colt Canada. And you can see something really interesting. Yeah, that's not far at all. That's a 7-minute drive, according to Google Maps. So, real interesting choice of site. Now, this isn't definitive. This is not, I think it's pretty good for raising some questions, but I cannot say that it is a definitive 100%. So I reached out, of course, to Colt Canada and didn't get an answer, but I also reached out to CZ. and didn't get an answer, which is interesting. But you might be saying, why are you getting CZ involved in this at all? Why are you mentioning CZ when you've been talking about Colt? Well, Colt is part of the Colt CZ group. And the Colt CZ group includes the following companies: Colt, CZ, Colt with that little Canadian flag, that's Colt Canada, CZ USA, Dan Wesson, Seller and Belliot, so if that's your ammo brand, also something to consider. Swiss Ammunition and Arms, Spur, 4M Tactical, Bruno Rifles, Colt CZ Defense Solutions, EGCZ Academy, Colt CZ Hungary, and so forth. So, this raises the questions of whether the Colt CZ group are in fact the people who are engaging in the destruction of firearms for the Canadian government. Now, one of the sort of critiques I've seen of, this issue online is people saying, well, it doesn't really matter if Colt Canada does this because somebody's going to do it, and it doesn't matter if it's me. Well, here's the thing. First of all, I don't really think that's great logic. The idea that, well, somebody's going to do this terrible thing, and so who cares who does it, really kind of absolves everybody of any kind of personal responsibility. I personally think that if you've got principles, you can just say, no, we're not going to do that. Find someone else. And here's the other thing. The find someone else is actually a big deal here, because it's entirely likely that find someone else is a monumental task for the Canadian government here, that they would be in a very difficult spot if they can't find someone else, which seems likely. Who else already has A, the industrial capacity, and B, the business firearms license, and C, the willingness to work with the Canadian government on this project? I'm not seeing a whole lot of names, especially because the Canadian government has kind of systematically destroyed the firearms industries in Canada over the last several years. So there are other companies that I don't think would want to do it, but might theoretically have had the capacity. But now they don't exist. You blew them up. So this could put a major obstacle in between the Canadian government and disarming the Canadian public. And quite frankly, this should be something that is shocking to people out there, because if you are an American looking at this, you might say, well, what do I care about Canadians? Well, if they're willing to do it to Canadians, they're also going to be willing to do it to Americans too. And that means you, potentially one day. So, yeah. Also, a lot of the Americans I've met in the firearms sphere are good people, principled people, people who believe in things like the U.S. Second Amendment, which, if CZ is on board with this, clearly they are not. And I'm hoping that people are willing to sort of save their dollars and spend them in places that that maybe agree with them. Now, I would love to see CZ make a statement and clear this up. Maybe this is wrong. I've laid out the basis for my belief here, but I can't say that I've got it 100%, because of course the people who could confirm this didn't respond when I asked. They didn't say no, they didn't say yes, they just crickets. Now maybe they don't know who I am, and I sound like a dick saying that, but they may not know who the heck I am. They may not care, but CZ, what's the deal? Are you on board with this? Is this something you're cool with? And if so, the CZs I have will probably be the last CZs I ever buy. And there's probably a lot of people who feel the same way. So anyway, thank you for watching. I hope you found this to be interesting or educational. Please like this video, share it with as many people as you can. Really, this one I think is kind of important. And subscribe if you want to see more content. That one's really more for me and possibly for you if you enjoyed this video. So thank you for watching. Hope this has armed you with knowledge. See you next time. And I also want to thank my Patreon supporters at the $50 level: Bottle Shock and Oz, Canada's National Firearms Association, PJs Forever, the Canadian Coalition for Firearms Rights, Canadian Shooting Sports Association, Kyle Fox, Angela Skelton, Cielo, Shay B, and Johan/Phoenix. I also want to thank at the $20 level Lindsay Metcalf, Drunkle of the Baileys, Mark, Andrew Elsich, Larry Kalniak, Cameron Johnson, and Marvin CZ. Thank you for watching. Hope this has armed you with knowledge. See you next time.